We're going to be talking about how to engage remotely with your customers in these turbulent times. So what I would appreciate if you can do quickly is I've written down the things that you've been saying that you want to make sure that you learn about today. If you could please put in the chat, what is the main thing that you need to engage people with online? If you could put that into the chat right now, that would be really great. And yes, Ella Wakely, you can have a shout out. Hello. So if anyone here can please put things into the chat, what is the main thing that you need to get engagement with people online with and you're finding tricky? And I will see if I can keep an eye on those as we go through. So let's talk about how to engage remotely with your customers in these turbulent times. Well, all of you right now are going to be experiencing this screen here an awful lot. What's this? This is a typical webinar screen. People dialing into Zoom and you all seeing each other, some people with various backgrounds. And I think it's rare that many of you are actually going to be having a goat on your webinar. Yes, that is a goat. Because this, of course, is goat from goat to meeting. Yes, why go to meeting when you can goat to meeting? And this is a great example of doing something unexpected. And the unexpected is one of the 5 things that intrinsically motivates people. This here is a model from my book, The 5 Spurs of Engagement. And that's what engagement does, is engagement spurs us. And by spur, I am referring to 2 things. First of all, the spurs at the end of a cowboy boot. Literally, if they stick into your skin, you're going to react to that, right? These 5 things we're going to look at, when they engage you, they make you physiologically react. You can't help it. And the second thing is, with spurs, as you can see here, is that a spur is also a word in English that means anything that goads, impels, urges as to action, speed, or achievement. The thing about engagement is it compels us, it draws us in, it pushes us to engage and to achieve more. And this is really important to talk about right now, because as we face a downturn, the big mistake that many organizations will make, just as we can see here in this advert from the Financial Times, is that people stop advertising, is that they don't spur themselves forward, they slow down. And this, as it's already been referred to by Joe earlier on, talking about the error that people make when they begin to lower their advertising during crises and recessions, is we actually find that if you don't cut your budget, if you increase your budget, you will grow. And so we can see here in this chart that those people that cut their budget after a recession, they shrank their market share. And there's lots of data around this I'm not going to go into right now, but this is a very, very important factor. So today we're going to be looking at, well, this is something I certainly want to urge you and spur you to do. We won't be looking at the whole thing, but I want to ask you, what is your Corona campaign? What is your pandemic pivot, right? Don't assume right now business is normal and then fail to communicate because you expect things are going to be the same. Instead, I want to urge you, focus your offering on the essential and then do what you do best online and engage customers in it. And that's what we're going to be looking at right now, is do what you do best online and engage customers in it. So first things first, a few engagement principles. First of all, we engage with things the same way we engage with people. This is a foundational understanding, right? Is that we engage with things the same way we engage with people. So the same way that people engage as students are in a classroom, as Jeff has put here, the same way that people engage in a classroom is the same way that people engage with a brand, is the same way that people engage with a product, is the same way that a user engages with a bit of software, is the same way that people engage with a friend or a spouse or a romantic interest. We engage the same way with everything. And yes, Ella Wakely, your dog can have a shout out. There's a great example of engagement right there, I believe. And it's the same process. Yes, hello, Pat the dog, you get a shout out. It's the same process whether we engage offline and online as well. So in the same way that we engage with people, the same as we engage with things, we also engage the same online or offline. It's the practices that differ, not the process. And I'll give you an example of this right now. These are people working in intensive care on a ward where people have corona, who are being treated for coronavirus. And these healthcare workers you will have seen this, have stuck pictures of their faces to themselves, because with their personal protective equipment, you cannot see their face. Why have they done this? Well, I'm sure many people can guess here, which is we want to see the faces of people that we are engaging with, that we are talking to, that are looking after us. Now, this is offline. Does it work online? Sure, it does. There's a reason why it really irritates us when all of us are on Zoom or on Skype and someone decides not to turn their video on. In fact, Harvard Business Review did a whole thing here about they did 12 steps to make a great virtual meeting. Step number 1, use video. Now, I'm not saying that you have to force introverts to use video if they don't want to, or someone's ill or whatever, but I'm saying in general, we want the rule to be that we can see each other. And why is this? It's because the first thing that internally causes us to engage with things is sharedness. We engage physiologically and automatically with sharedness. Here's an example. You walk down the street and you're a Man United fan, and you see a bunch of people wearing Man United clothing, you're immediately going to do what they're doing. Hey, go Man U, right? And before you've even had a chance to think about whether you do it or not, you do it. Because when we see people that are similar to us and have insignias or various other things that say they're part of our in-group, we engage with them automatically. You can't help it. It's the same when you're in a foreign country, you're walking down the street and you hear somebody speaking your language, your head turns before you've even had a chance to decide whether you want your head to turn or not. You can't help it. So it's no surprise then that in the wake of the coronavirus, we've seen good leaders do things like this. Here, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, has announced she's taking a 20% pay cut in solidarity with workers hit by coronavirus. This is a wonderful example of demonstrating sharedness. I'm in it with you. I'm showing solidarity. We've seen football teams do this, like Juventus and Inter Milan. We've seen the CEO of Comcast do this. Although Jacinda Ardern went a step further, because she's been hosting Facebook Lives at home. It's rare for a world leader to invite you into their home. And after she's put her daughter to bed, because she has a very young child, she has been doing Facebook Lives and just addressing those concerns that people have at this time. That's a very, very wonderful act of sharedness. We're in this together. I'm not one for celebrities, but I love the British celebrity Tom Reed Wilson, who's been inviting people to do poetry, and he's been sharing different people performing on his Instagram page. Or we've also seen this on the streets of various countries. Here we are in Italy, people performing. There is this thing about when people come together, it automatically engages us. We can't help it. If you walk down the street and you see a group of people together, you cannot help but notice it. So the language of sharedness, the language of creating sharedness that engages people is we, us, and ours, right? And I think this is kind of, you might assume this is somewhat obvious. First of all, it's not obvious. If you watch a briefing with some world leaders, some business leaders, they will not use words we, us, ours. They will not talk collectively. They'll just talk about themselves. But there's also a second thing here, which is the language of sharedness and we, us, ours. You only get to that deeper language of togetherness after you make a U-turn. I like to say this: you go from me to we, you need to make a U-turn first. So if you want to flip the me over into we, right? Because me and we are the same, word, but just upside down. But if you want to flip a me to a we, you've got to go through the U-turn first. You've got to talk about you. And if you're an organization that is used to talking about me as the company, you can't just jump to we. It will be authentic. You'd be better off just talking about you, talking about the person at the end, the consumer. Swatch did a great example of this. Swatch sent out an email, and even though they as a company have a really great long history of very much having a sense of we-ness with their Swatch club, they still said, we love you. It's time to take care of yourself and your loved ones. They focused on the you rather than the we, which I think is very, very meaningful there. Even Apple know this. They have not said we're open for us, we're open for you. They're talking about the individual. Even Google had the good sense to do this. On their homepage underneath, it says, to everyone helping, thank you. Rather than saying we're helping, we're in this together, They've decided to say thank you because they recognize that actually some of the people that are really doing that are the NHS, when are you in the UK, the NHS workers, health workers, people like that, key workers. Now, churches have actually been perhaps an important place where the idea of we-ness has cropped up. And I think it's good that brands have tried to steer away from owning too much community when it would be inauthentic to do so. There's a fantastic article from Harvard Business Review about what to communicate in a recession. This was written 10 years ago, and their second point is focus on family values. Focus on what people are going to be drawing to. And they say here, zany humor and appeals on the basis of fear are out, right? And so it's, again, perfect that Apple's very famous Shot on iPhone series would move towards an at-home series showing family life. Or here we see that Nike has created the Living Room Cup, where they're encouraging a sense of sharedness, right? This is certainly sharedness because we see them profiling all these different people and different types of people here. You've got a mum with a baby there. You've got people of different ethnicity and color. There's a man in that photo as well as women. They are promoting a sense of sharedness. So the first thing that you need to do to engage people remotely is to create sharedness. And what I want to say to you is don't overstate the relationship. Celebrate the true heroes, not yourself. Don't get too over the top here. Second of all, do share examples of how you are helping your target customer with family values, with family things. So there's no need to bang on and on and on about things that you do that aren't necessarily family focused. Try to make things about the focus of their family. They will derive a sense of sharedness from that. And finally, profile people's stories. The second model in the 5 spurs of engagement from my book is the P, prompts. And prompting is very much like walking through Times Square. Of course, this is very much pre-pandemic. When you walk through Times Square, you are getting prompted by lots and lots of things that want your attention. And right now, we don't have a lot of organizations trying to grab your attention. I think that's very wise. Excuse me while I have a sip. But what they have done, of course, is they have reminded us of their commitment to us. Here we have Adobe talking about how they're committed to us. Adobe, of course, made the move to make Creative Cloud free over this time. Deliveroo, a delivery service in the UK, has prompted its customers in a similar way, keeping them updated with kind of clear emails. But I would suggest that there are also fun ways to keep prompting and staying in touch. Kentucky Fried Chicken here have created, as you can see on the right, a series of backdrops that you can use for your Zoom calls. I wonder whether I should be using one now. And on the left, they've been rating people making homemade KFC, although they've been doing it with somewhat of a kind of critical celebrity chef idea. And of course, another way that we've been prompted, which I think is beautiful here, the people of Switzerland shining up a massive banner of hope on the Matterhorn, that wonderful, famous mountain in the Alps. I guess my point here is that you need to stay in touch with your customers. Don't decrease how you're being in touch, but just think about how you are in touch. And there have been examples of that earlier on today. So here would be my tips for prompting customers. Provide frequent bite-sized interaction rather than long communications. Don't get caught into talking too much. Second of all, point to a bigger story of hope that this will be over. That's really, really important, is when you prompt, when you're communicating, point to a bigger story of hope. And finally, ideally, you want to prompt people through an owned channel that they're subscribed to. If you have an app, use the app to stay in touch with people. If they're on Twitter, use Twitter. If you've got people's email, but you try to find the most direct route that you can stay in touch with people and just provide frequent bite-sized interactions. Third way of engaging people online, engaging your customers remotely. And I think this is the previous two might be the more obvious ones, but this one I think is very important, is now is actually a very good time to be unexpected. And of course, again, we can go back to GoToMeeting. Many people will be having their Zoom calls and their FaceTime calls and things like this. And anything that you can do to kind of create some spontaneity is good, because what's gone when we're in lockdown is spontaneity. Right, our days become rather bland. They become there is very little stimulus to create unexpected and change. And we crave novelty, we crave the unexpected, and we crave spontaneity. Well, how can you go about creating that? I know many people here, as an example of my friend James Poulter, who's declared Wednesdays as Hat Wednesday. And he says all video conferencing attendees must be wearing at least one hat at all times on Hat Wednesdays. I've seen many people around the world do this. And of course, Vogue caught on to it. And Vogue did a profile test driving the 20 most smile-inducing hats for your next Zoom gathering. And clever Vogue, of course, is they're also selling those hats at the same time. That's unexpected. That creates spontaneity in people's day when otherwise it is bland. Here we have a B2B business, Steve Edge Design, and they've declared that since people are now working at home, as you can see I've highlighted, they have 24 new office locations, right? They've gone for the unexpected. Rather than trying to say, well, we furloughed our staff and they're unavailable, or, we're working from home, but we're embarrassed to talk about it. They've gone, no, we're going to own it. We have 24 new office locations. In perhaps a more moving example, we have here a picture of Gary Neville. Gary Neville owns the Stock Exchange Hotel, and they decided in the midst of Corona to allow their staff to not come into work, but they're still going to pay their staff. So that's really good. But also they're providing all of the hotel rooms to the National Health Service here in the UK for people who are ill to be looked after. And underneath you can see Lyndon Taylor hated him as a player for Man United, but he's a decent bloke and a top pundit. And so you even get people that dislike you but are starting to like you because you're doing what is unexpected. I guess my point is this, is that whereas Maximus Decimus Meridius said, what we do in life echoes in eternity, I would say what we do in lockdown echoes for eternity. Find ways to be unexpected at this time. Find ways to do something that is novel, that is new. Phone your customers. Write to them individually. Find ways to do something, and if it's unique and it's lockdown and it's got that unexpected edge, what you do in lockdown now will echo for eternity. Now, we talked about sharedness and prompts and the unexpected. There are two more elements of engagement that I want us to make sure we cover. And the fourth here is giving people a chance to respond. This is, again, very, very important. What do I mean by respond? I mean that when we see something that we can respond to and push like a big red button, engagement, the rules of engagement generally say that we will do it. Right? If I show you the big red button and I say, don't push the big red button, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to push the big red button. We as humans have an appetite to create. We have an appetite to be involved. And so here we've got, for example, Adobe. And not only did they just say, right, okay, we're going to give you Creative Cloud for free. What they then went ahead and did was they said, right, we're going to give you Creative Cloud for free, but also we want you to use your creativity to honor heroes. So I'm trying to say honor heroes because you've got the two H's there. And they have created a way for you to respond. So rather than just saying, great, well, Creative Cloud is free, what they're saying is get the Creative Cloud, but here's a way that we'd like you to use it. Respond in this way. This is very distinctive because what many organizations will do right now, and indeed many webinars, I mean, we're on a webinar right now, is we have loads of webinars, we have loads of content flying around, we have, kind of trepidatious marketing flying around, but all of it is telling people about what to do. Very little of it is helping people with how to do it. But here we have Adobe saying, right, here is something that we'd like people to get involved in. There's a sense of howness to it. And this is critical. There is a very famous model of leadership called Situational Leadership 2 by Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard, as popularized in the series of books, The 1 Minute Manager. And in it, they say that when people require a high degree of direction because they don't know what to do, and a high degree of emotional support because they're afraid, in other words, if people are in a place of uncertainty, which we're in right now, they don't need content and direction, they need coaching. There's a very important difference here. Think about helping when you're learning a new task. When you first start learning a new task, immediately, you pick up the manual and you start reading it. And then after a while, you begin to get frustrated because things aren't going very well. At that point, when you're frustrated, what you don't need is more content. You need someone to come alongside you and coach you and help you. That's what they're saying here, is coaching is actually the way of leading people right now that would be the most effective. Now, if we think about you being a B2C company, certainly your ability to coach your customers is less, but you still can tell customers, okay, here's how you can do things. So tutorials and things like this would be of assistance. However, if you're in the B2B environment, coaching would be very, very powerful because you are getting alongside your customers and you're saying, I'm not just going to tell you what to do right now. I'm going to help you with how you do it. And that is a method of learning that people are more up for when they're in uncertainty, as they are in the world right now. A great example of this in a very commercial, in a very broad brush way, as it was mentioned earlier, is this gentleman here with the moppy hair. This is Joe Wicks. He is somewhat of an Instagram celebrity who does HIIT training. That's exercises in his house. And he's been live streaming every single morning. And me and my kids, we do this every morning. And we are jumping around and exercising to his little routine. And you have kids all over the world doing this. And guess what? It's responsive. Coming back to the point here of engagement, is what engages us the most is something that we can respond with. He's not just telling us what to do, he's helping us with how we do it. We follow him as he does it. But he doesn't just keep it plain. He's also created the unexpected. You can see here that he's got different things on the wall and behind him. And every time he live streams, which is every day, he changes things around. So he creates a spot the difference. During his workout sessions, he's doing quizzes to keep the adults entertained. At the moment, he's been going through capital cities, and people have to guess the capital cities. And then every Friday is Fancy Dress Friday, where he, as you can see here, dressing up as Spider-Man, and people dress up in other things. Here's somebody dressing up as Joe Wicks, being Spider-Man, with an ironic picture of Joe Wicks behind them. The point is that he is creating unexpectedness in it, and he's also creating a wonderful sense of sharedness. It's a great example of not just giving content to people, but coaching people at this time. I think all of us could learn an awful lot from what Joe Wicks is doing. And of course, I don't think that he's doing too bad in business right now. Whilst he's donating all of the ad revenue from his live stream, of which he now has the Guinness World Record for the largest health and fitness live stream ever, his business, I'm sure, is making a hefty amount. They've reduced their regular program down by almost 50%, but I'm sure that they have got no lack of people coming along and buying that. And so, of course, here's the point. If you want to engage people, invite them to respond, give them a button to push. I want you to ask yourselves, how are you enabling people to respond to you? How are you activating action, as I say here? How are you giving people an invitation, not just information? Right, this is what I'm trying to do here right now. For instance, I'm not just talking at you and telling you what to do. I'm inviting you to consider, how could you use this yourself? Don't just tell them what, help them with how. Finally, as we begin to close out now, the fifth spur of engagement, SPURS, the last S is story. The thing that engages us the most as humans, more than any of these other things, and certainly the most deeply or the most profoundly, is story. In times of crisis, people want a better story. Famously, here's Martin Luther King on the Lincoln Memorial steps in a time of turmoil that would not be unlike to what we're experiencing now in terms of uncertainty. And, well, of course, the BBC in the UK has stepped up. It recognizes it. We're here to entertain the nation in time of need. What does that mean? It means it's trying to give a better story. Well, this is what Patagonia have precisely gone and done. Patagonia they've released their Corona campaign, which is stories that inspire. And every day they've got live streams going on Facebook and Instagram and other platforms where you can follow them, and you get to chat with people that are these, leading visionaries that Patagonia customers would love, right? Patagonia is not just giving people content, it's switched towards coaching. This is the perfect opportunity for this. Again, is coaching. Not trying to think big and broadcast, but think small and social. And so 2 very simple points here on telling a story is inspire and give hope. Right? There is no end to the need that we have for people to inspire and give hope. So there we go. The 5 spurs of engagement. Create sharedness. Prompt your customers. Do the unexpected. Invite responses and tell a story. Now, if you do these, whether you do them offline or online, they will always engage people. Whether you do them in a Zoom room or you do them in a Skype room or you do them over Twitter, yes, The way in which you do it might change, but the process of engagement will always remain the same. People will always engage around these 5 things. And that's exactly what's going on here. If we look at this in the worst way, people are being prompted by stories about there being new loo roll. There's a sense of sharedness in the hysteria, which is what hysteria is. It's the unexpected, because people never expected loo roll to be the thing that people would run out of. There is a sense of response there because people get up and go to the shops and do it. And ultimately, it's a story, but it's just a really bad story. Tell good stories, give hope. And that's me. I have made my way of doing this, of course, I've made for free on my website a whole bunch of tools that are my way of providing coaching and support to people at this time. You can check them out at scottgould.me.